Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reserve Seating. We had a bit of a break, but we're happy to be back answering your questions and movie related topics, just things that you sent us. So, first and foremost, we love these episodes. It gives Rob and I an opportunity to connect an opportunity to connect with all of you, and we greatly appreciate whenever you send us questions or topics for these episodes. So, why don't we get right into it? The first question comes from our own Rosalie. I love workplace comedies and dramas, but often find the movie version of a workplace isn't accurate. What movies defy this trend and actually get the workplace right?
Yeah, so being a teacher is not what it is in the movies. I don't have to tell anybody that probably. I will bring up just the one movie. I actually wrote a review of it a year ago, and it's a German film. I'm going to butcher the name, and I apologize to the filmmaker Ilka Katak. I really apologize because I know I'm butchering that. But it's a movie called The Teacher's Lounge, and it sounds depressing to say it like this, but it's probably the best representation of what it's like to be a teacher, in terms of the ways that you have to sort of negotiate your students, your peers, and the parents that are involved, and kind of the different cocktail of personalities that sometimes kind of cause issues. But it really did hit me, especially as a teacher, just kind of saying, no, this is exactly what it's like. There's a helplessness to it sometimes. There's a way where you're sort of being vilified in some cases by certain people, maybe unreasonably, but also remembering kind of why you do it, and there's lots of elements of that sort of those themes in the movie. And so I really would recommend that one a lot to anybody, not just teachers, but just anybody who wants a really good drama.
Are there any off the top of your head that do it really, really poorly? Like the worst one?
Dead Poet Society.
So for me, I've mostly worked in offices. I just work in business.
Mhm.
So the ones I think get it the most right. Well, first, Um, in high school, I briefly worked for a telemarketing agency, and Boiler Room gets that really right, because they basically just look for aggro
Yeah.
high schoolers and college age people. You're expected just to be as brash and obnoxious as possible, and it's all about like in Boiler Room, it's like making big rips and like at the telemarketing place, it was just like setting up appointments and getting commissions and everything like that. And people would hang over your shoulder and tell you you suck, like while you're trying to talk to somebody on the phone if you're not doing it according to the finesse of a script you were given. So I saw both of I had that role and saw that movie around the same time, and it was like, oh yeah, they really get this right. But in terms of my actual career, I would say Office Space gets it pretty spot on, just in terms of corporate culture and just kind of people being easily kind of strung out by their job, by a lot of like the monotony of it, or just sort of feeling enclosed and can't really like spread their wings.
Right.
Um, Process frustrations like about memos and about doing things a certain way when you might be able to achieve the exact same thing in a more streamlined or easier way. Stuff about cake, like, and like forced kind of camaraderie. But most specifically, I think the movie really gets right that it's kind of a safety area, like a safe space for people who don't really have a lot of, who are maybe great workers, but maybe don't have a lot of vision or
Okay.
aren't very courageous about pursuing a dream or don't have a dream. I'm not saying that as a pejorative because I would include myself in there. Like I'm really good at somebody telling me, hey, do this, and I can kind of riff a little bit, but like I'm not a visionary. So like
Wow.
I find a lot of safety in corporate culture in a sense. I would say also on that other hand, I think Steve Jobs does a really great job of doing a character study of a visionary type and
Mhm.
the frustrations that they have, in terms of I've got this idea and it's a multi-million dollar idea, but everybody's saying no to me. Everybody's trying to like poke holes in this idea. I have to appease marketing. I have to appease the IT crowd. I have to appease shareholders. when they can't they see that the thing that I'm trying to do right now is going to be the thing that is the norm 15 years from now. We're going to be ahead of the curve. And I think it does a really good job of, kind of diagnosing why people are jerks who are often in these like roles. Their sort of inner circle, and that helps enable them and keep them sane. And also just the need for visionaries in business and in technology more specifically.
All right, next one comes from Chris. He says, after rewatching Trap in a fairly full theater 2 weeks from opening night, I feel like M. Night is on his way back to making movies on par with Signs, Sixth Sense, etc., etc. Am I wrong? Do you think he'll never achieve that level of quality again?
I really enjoyed Trap. I think it's like you could land a 747 inside its plot holes,
Yeah,
but it's fine. Like if you're willing to give it those allowances, there's a lot of fun to be had, and I had a great time watching it. I don't think that he's ever going to get back to Sixth Sense Unbreakable Signs. Um, I don't know if it's just like an artist kind of like an athlete, like just sort of in the prime of their career
yeah,
type of thing. Um, he also was kind of doing more of a Twilight Zone, Rod Serling, Steven Spielberg trajectory there, like an Amblin type of
yeah.
thing.
I don't think
And
he wants to do that anymore.
I don't think so either. I think right now he wants to do Hitchcock and Brian De Palma.
He wants trash. He
Yeah,
wants to do slimy. I mean, and I say this with all love, like slimier kind of B movies,
yeah.
and I think at that he's succeeding really well. You can sort of trace my transition with Shyamalan by reading my reviews of his last couple movies on for
Mhm.
the site, because I really was operating when I was like reviewing, old or even Knock at the Cabin last year. I'm looking at them as like there's a shot because Signs is my favorite Shyamalan movie. I think Signs is a masterpiece. I think that movie
Yeah.
is so perfect, and maybe it's not his best. I know people like Unbreakable and all that, and Sixth Sense, obviously. But when I look at Shyamalan, I go, that's such a beautiful premise. It's a simple metaphor. It's executed really beautifully. That's the best intersection of his highbrow and, for me, his lowbrow sensibilities, his Signs. So when I see his newer movies, I'm always thinking to myself, well, is it close to that? And I think personally, like, I'm not saying I take back what I've said about his movies, but I'm recognizing now after Trap that like he just doesn't want to do that anymore. He's not
Right.
interested in that synthesis anymore. He's making B movies and he's stylizing his dialogue and he's doing these things that are just like, and God bless him. He's like, I'm putting my house up for, I'm taking out a third mortgage on my house to pay for this movie and hoping that it makes its money back. I certainly can't fault him for that. While, Old is not a movie I really like. Knock at the Cabin also didn't really work for me. I'm recognizing now that they're working for him and that
Mhm.
he's striving towards something very different than maybe he had been in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I kind of have to grow with him as he grows.
It's so apt the character he plays in Lady in the Water, where it's like I'm the artist who
Yeah.
is going to change the world. But I think like that's kind of what his mindset was pre Lady in the Water,
Mhm.
where every at bat was I have to hit a grand slam.
Right.
And now I think it's sort of like how you and I write articles every week. It's like that's what M. Night Shyamalan's doing with directing, where
Yeah.
he's just like, I'm going to do it because I like doing it and it's easy for me to do at this point because I've gotten so used to it. And some of them are going to be really good and some of them are not going to be as good. And if you like my style, there's going to be enough there for you. All right. Our next question comes from Michael B. This one's dark and an interesting headspace to be put in. But a loved one has been kidnapped. You can send one of the following to get them back. Who are you sending? And the choices are James Bond, Jason Bourne, John Rambo, Ethan Hunt, and John Wick.
When I originally was looking at these the other day, and I selected Ethan Hunt, and mostly because his relentlessness. I figured of
Mm,
all of these guys, Hunt is the one who's never going to stop. Right? He's going to keep going. He is the living manifestation of destiny. And I think I still stand by that. I was watching John Wick last night. It was on cable, and I kind of think to myself, well, he's going to keep going. He's kind of a human just bullet sponge as well. But I think about, my life, and I think about the things that I've done and why someone would be kidnapping one of my loved ones. And I'm just going to aim big and say international espionage. I don't really know from Assassins. So I'm just going to assume that there's some sort of big espionage plot. And I'm going to go with Ethan Hunt because I know he'd bring my loved one back home.
I changed my answer twice on this one. It was never going to be James Bond because I feel like he's lost a lot of loved ones over the course of those movies.
Yeah.
Jason Bourne, I don't want to hear Blackbriar Treadstone words ever again. So none of that. The three that I was considering was at first John Rambo because I'm just like I want him to go in scorched earth
Yeah.
and get my loved one back. However, the plot of Rambo Last Blood was him doing this to get a kidnapped girl back and she dies. So like no, that disqualifies him. I thought Ethan Hunt because it's a if who else to send on an impossible mission than the guy from IMF. But he also lost his entire team at the beginning of the first movie.
Yeah.
He's on a good winning streak. He got Monahan back in MI3. He's
And
doing
he's
well.
stuck with it with Monahan. Like he checks in
Yeah.
on her every movie,
Yeah.
and
So
yeah.
he's a close second for me, but I think I'll pick John Wick just because prior to being set in motion, that's when he's lost the people. So like he hasn't lost anybody, but I don't really think he's got the only other ally I can think of that he got along the way was like Fishburne and Halle Berry, but they turned out okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
um but really the answer is Liam Neeson and Taken.
all right, next question comes from Review the World. What level of interest do you have in completing canonical lists like Sight and Sound? They shoot pictures, don't they? 1,000 greatest films, 21st century's most accomplished films. Basically, just checking off like the great lists.
Yeah.
How much do we do? And I'm looking over my shelf because I do have from somewhere in here. Where is it? It's on my shelf somewhere and I can't find it. But the I when I was a kid, I used to check off the pages in the books of movies that I
Yeah.
have seen. And then an interesting opportunity for a plug. Our friends Patrick Bromley and Heather Wixon,
Hey,
darkness right here. This one comes with a little. I was really excited with this. A little checklist. And one
there you
of the things I
go.
did when I got my copy of Patrick and Heather's book was I actually did go through and check off which ones of these I've seen.
Oh,
As,
cool.
as kind of a
Are-
project for Scary Movie Month this year. I was going to save this for Scary Movie Month and say, all right, let me
yeah,
get the ones I haven't seen on here.
that's a
Because
good idea. I need to do that too.
so long story short, my answer is I used to be much more into it than I am now. I was when I was younger and I was pursuing cinema seriously and I was really saying like I need to see the canonical films.
Mhm.
I am getting better at recognizing when I'm going to get bored by homework movies and I say to myself, if I haven't seen that yet, I will see it when the need compels me.
I have had days where I'm like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get like one of these like 1001 movies to see before I die and make sure that I watch all of them that I haven't, or more specifically, Roger Ebert's Great Movies series.
Yeah.
I mapped it out where I'm like, if I watch one a week, it'll take me 7 years, and like I can do that, and it's only one a week. But then I'll go in alphabetical order. I'll go in order of the book or the first book, and it'll be like the Apu trilogy, and I'm like, I just can't
Yeah.
get there. Or because like I read the essay, and I'm just like, the essay didn't do it for me. Like I just so like you said, it's avoiding it becoming homework. So I can't really do it that way. What I really rely on is a movie theater like the Music Box sort of curating stuff for me in the sense that if they have a Montgomery Clift Elizabeth Taylor series like they did during the summer, I'm like, well, this is an excuse to go see these movies on 35 millimeter, and I probably would never see Wild River or A Place in the Sun if not for the Music Box suggesting it for me. And that's a fun way to do it without making it feel like homework. And I love doing that because the theater will like package 4 or 5 movies together from a common director or common star, and then you get like a real kind of good impression of like, are you a fan of them or not? And do you want to seek out more of that stuff? So I do it that way as opposed to doing the reference books. So our next question comes from Mike S. What is your favorite Soderbergh movie?
My answers are boring. Out of
Yeah.
sight, out of sight, Ocean's 11. I really don't think we're talking about No Sudden Move enough. I feel like that kind of
Okay.
just came and went. I think that movie's really great. The one, I mean, again, it feels boring, but I love his Solaris. I only saw
Okay.
that for the first time maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, same here.
The one that's for me the most just like, I mean, aside, I feel like Ocean's 11 is just like one of those movies where that is just like, that is a piece of chocolate cheesecake. That is a movie where you
Hmm.
just like, you anything, you stop, you watch it. It's a perfect movie. I'm a huge Ocean's 12 fan as well for almost the opposite reasons. Um, Logan Lucky, in terms of the last like 15 years of Soderbergh, Logan Lucky is, again, for as much as it's kind of similar to an Ocean's 11, it's got a completely different energy, and it's got a completely different pathos to it, and it's got this wonderful heart, and Tatum is so wonderful in it. And that one is, I come back to that one a lot. Sometimes I'll be on a Soderbergh kick, and I'll
Hmm.
watch like one or two new ones I haven't seen, but I almost always start it with Logan Lucky.
For me, like there's ones around the periphery that aren't my among my favorites, but I really like a lot, like Bubble and The Girlfriend Experience and The Informant, I think is
The
hilarious.
Informant was on my list too.
Yeah, my top three though, if you would have asked me 20 years ago, I probably would have said Traffic, just because it's so ambitious and well acted. And I haven't seen it probably in 20 years, but I really like it a lot. But I think of the ones that I revisit more, it's the chocolate cheesecake
Mm.
element of Ocean's 11, or Out of Sight. It's one of those two. I think it's whatever one I'm watching at the time, I'm convinced is my favorite of
I,
those two.
and I respect this. I mean, we're picking very light and easy, again, kind of sweet movies, dessert
Yeah.
movies. I know I respect his Che. I never saw the second Che movie.
I didn't see Che. Yeah.
Like he does these heavier, things, and I think that's a wonderful proof of his dexterity.
Hmm.
Which I would certainly encourage him to make movies of any genre. I'll watch anything Steven Soderbergh makes. But the ones that stick with me or that feel the most, it's kind of like me with the Coen brothers, where I love and respect so many Coen brothers movies, but there's something about comedies. There's something about their comedies that just stick with me more than their dramas. It might just be the inherent rewatchability of comedy over drama. It might just be that. But with
Hmm.
Soderbergh, it's the same way. When Soderbergh is like being very slick, that for me is like my favorite Soderbergh. All right, Jay, uh, fantasy scenario. What two actors you each think would be most interesting to see in a movie together? Rules. They can't have been in the same cast.
Hmm.
One living and one not. Keep it 100% fantasy, and no restrictions on genders. Multiple variations if we want, basically any gender. First of all, thank you, Jay, for this. This is a good question. All these questions are good, by the way. This is a good crop of questions.
Yeah, yeah, really good.
Thank you for doing the work on this scenario, Jay. We like
Hmm.
this. Adam, go first. I have one pairing that jumped out to me, but you're much better at this kind of abstract thinking than I am, so I want to hear yours first.
I have one that when I thought of it, I was like, that's money in the bank. And I have one that I think is just like insane and I want to see it.
Okay.
So the insane one is I would really like to see Marlon Brando and Danny Glover in a Lethal Weapon movie.
Yes.
Like I think Brando would make such an interesting Martin Riggs.
Hmm.
Or conversely, I would like to see Marlon Brando as Mike Lowry with Martin Lawrence in a Bad Boys movie.
There you go.
So that's the crazy one.
Okay.
The one that I think is just a sure bet is I would put Glenn Powell and Audrey Hepburn together in a movie. And I think that Glenn Powell, after watching the Billy Wilder Sabrina, I'm just like he could do the William Holden thing in his sleep. He would do that really well.
So this one, the one that popped out to me, I don't know why. I just want to see these two in a movie together.
Yeah.
Uh, Brian Cox and Katharine Hepburn.
That would be really good. That would remind me of like a Virginia Woolf type movie
Yeah,
or
that's what I was
Babysitting.
thinking. I just want to see them bicker at each other. I just want to see
Yeah,
them, just go verbal sparring. That's what I mean.
yeah.
But it's funny because it would have to be older Hepburn. It's like I want a screwball comedy between octogenarians.
And our last question is favorite Lego sequel. So Rob, what would you pick?
Favorite Lego sequels. Let me ask you this real quick. Are we counting? I don't think this counts. Is Doctor Sleep a Lego sequel?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
I always classify Lego sequels as like anything with a giant gap between the
Yeah,
pre.
I mean, I guess it would help to define. I mean, for me, my
Yeah,
perspective is always Lego sequel is a concerted effort to bridge a gap where you are
mm,
taking a classic movie or a classic franchise, you're introducing a young cast and bringing back the old cast, whether
yeah.
that's a single character. So I was a little bit on the fence with Doctor Sleep, which is the director's cut, especially his movie I love. My
Yeah.
my my answer is Creed. I mean, there's really no for me. There's no better legacy sequel. What about you?
So I think your answer of Creed is very strong because there's a lot of continuity between Rocky Balboa and Creed, and I think that it did a good job of really energizing the franchise, which I love Rocky Balboa, but that's a movie for old men, and Creed made it cool again.
I love that movie too. Rocky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only knock on Creed is I think Creed 2 and Creed 3 are were such letdowns that for me that it sort of takes the wind out of the sails of Creed. Same with Force Awakens. I think for me the way that that franchise landed or that trilogy landed kind of nullifies all the good things that the Force Awakens does. I didn't think of Doctor Sleep. That's a great answer. For me, I guess just because they haven't effed it up, at least yet, is Top Gun Maverick.
That was the other one on my list. Yeah.
Because the thing that's nice about Top Gun Maverick is as cutting edge as Top Gun is, and it still holds up to this day, watching it just from like an action choreography perspective, having almost 30 years or more than 30 years, what would it be? Yeah, like 33 years or
Mhm.
so or more, 35, whatever, of updated film language to work with to shoot dogfights and aerial photography. I mean, like, and they take advantage of it. It's like such a groundbreaking way to do a sequel for that movie.
And it's funny because it's along for me, it's Creed is along those same lines from the boxing perspective because
Okay. Yeah.
the invention in the filming of the way Coogler shoots the boxing in that movie is almost parallel to the way that Kaczynski is shooting the improved technology for the fighter jets and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
do you think there's a movie that needs a legacy sequel? Because one of the things I really like about Creed is that it puts the Rocky movies in this new context. It really does try something different. And I think the same thing with Maverick, where it's like you're not just saying, let's make another Top Gun. You're sort of commenting on the whole idea of Top Gun as a franchise and of Maverick as a character. Do you think
Hmm.
that there's a franchise right now that's like in need of one of those?
Um, I mean, it's being done already, but I would say Superman.
Right. Yeah.
I think that that franchise sort of needs a fresh coat of paint, and I think has the opportunity to sort of carve out its own niche in terms of sincerity in a world of irony.
Yeah.
And that character, sort of fits that mold. So I'm really excited to see what happens for that. No, this was great. This was, I think, our best set of questions that we
Yeah,
got
really good set of
for
questions,
Mailbag.
everybody.
So yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much for that. We're going to be back next week with a Good Genes episode with special guests, our own Patrick Bromley, of course. And we're going to be talking about three movies that Gene Siskel gave positive reviews to. So we'll be going into David Mamet's House of Games, the Jerry Zucker, I believe, directed First Night with Sean Connery, Richard Gere, and Julia Ormond, which I've been meaning to watch for almost 30 years. And finally, Peter Weir's great The Truman Show. Until next time, Rob.
Until next time, this whole show was a trap.
Oh my god. So I should take you to the back room where
Hmm.
the extra shirts are?